Creative minds have come up with ideas to invigorate the way we design architecture. Inverted skyscrapers, dome-covered cities, and towers on asteroids are a few of their craziest concepts. But are they actually possible? Will these incredible creations one day be reality? These megaprojects look like they're straight out of the movies, but they might be the buildings of our future. Planet City. What if everyone on the planet lived in the same city? Impossible, right? Well, maybe not. Welcome to Planet City, a giant, sustainable city occupying a fraction of the Earth's surface, only 0.02%. That's about the size of an average US state. Sure, sounds small, but this hyper-dense metropolis could be capable of housing 10 billion people. Architect Liam Young came up with this radical design with the goal of freeing up the rest of the world so the Earth could recover and nature could prosper. Here, people would live in residential mountains that look like something out of Blade Runner. The city would operate as a closed loop, generate no waste, and be built with recycled materials. There would be over 85,000 square miles of buildings, up to 165 stories tall. Power would come from over 49 billion solar panels, while over 2,000 algae farms would filter pollution and provide supplementary food. Mega farms would be located between the buildings, as well as vertical orchards and solar fields. While the concept seems like a complete fantasy, it uses existing technologies or those in the process of being developed. Planet City was inspired by the half-Earth concept, developed by biologist Edward O. Wilson, which proposes that mass extinction can be avoided if we dedicate at least half of the surface of the Earth to nature. The microcosm of the planet would make supply chains more efficient, while affording the planet space to thrive. Unfortunately, it's incredibly unlikely we'd ever have the time, money, infrastructure, and simply the cooperation of the whole world to create a city this huge and dense. But Young knows that. He said that his design is fiction shaped like a city. But hey, architecture and innovation is all about dreaming big. So who knows if one day this design will be taken seriously. Analemna Tower. If you think Planet City is a little out there, then just wait till you see this concept. Because it's a skyscraper on an asteroid. Cloud Architecture Office came up with a wild idea for Analemna Tower, a building that would hover over the ground because it's attached to an asteroid that's been forcibly put into orbit around the Earth. The skyscraper would be suspended with high-strength cabling. It would be powered with space-based solar panels that have a constant exposure to sunlight. Meanwhile, the asteroid would be placed in an eccentric, geosynchronous orbit. This means it would constantly be moving, journeying between the northern and southern hemispheres. It would slow down for prolonged visits over cities like New York and London, which would be designated home bases. That means throughout a day, your exact address would vary wildly. Seems insane, right? But there actually is technology being developed that could make this possible one day. NASA's Asteroid Redirect mission aims to collect a boulder from an asteroid and place that boulder into a stable orbit around the Moon. In September 2022, NASA's DART actually made its first impact with an asteroid. As for the skyscraper itself, it could possibly be constructed of durable and lightweight materials like carbon fiber and aluminum. Of course, cables with the appropriate strength would have to be developed, and NASA would have to truly harness the orbit of an asteroid. But they're working on it, so maybe orbiting space skyscrapers aren't quite as out of this world as they appear. The walking city. Another completely new way of building cities was thought up in the early 60s, when nuclear tension from the Cold War started to inspire some apocalyptic designs. Archigram, a group of futuristic British architects aiming to imagine such a world, were inspired to create something incredibly unique: a walking city. Originally set in New York and then London, their design replaced traditional buildings with huge mechanical lightweight structures that could actually move thanks to some insect-like legs. Inside there would be residences, entertainment, schools, and areas for the production of resources. The machines would be fully independent and self-sufficient, so they wouldn't have to rely on the environment around them. this radical idea has even inspired books and films. The arcs themselves are like military submarines. They would drift endlessly across the Earth and could even connect to other walking cities to form hubs, where they could exchange population and resources. While these designs were thought of as too crazy to be realistic at the time, the arc design has inspired some of today's architecture, like the Arc in London or Centre Pompidou in Paris, but without the legs. The designs for the walking cities lacked specifics on how they would work, which makes it hard to believe they could be built today. The geometry also seems to make the movement of the legs impossible. But what about in the future? If we deem it necessary to have billion-dollar walking cities to live on Earth, then it may be possible with a lot of the right engineering. While it might be far-fetched, it's one of the most famous neo-futuristic designs ever created. Manhattan Dome, New York City. Architects have come up with plenty of ways to protect communities from the elements, but the Manhattan Dome is one of the most interesting. In 1960, Buckminster Fuller and Shoji Sadao proposed covering Midtown Manhattan with a giant geodesic dome. It would be 1 mile high and 1.8 miles across. Its purpose was to regulate weather and temperature while reducing air pollution. The dome would be made of wire-reinforced shatterproof glass. From the outside, it would be like a huge mirror. From the inside, its structural elements would be invisible, like looking through a window screen, so the sky could still be seen. Fuller and Sadao are the same people who designed the Montreal Biosphere, so they had some experience with domes, but not at this scale. The Manhattan Dome was estimated to weigh 4,000 tons. Fuller calculated that a fleet of 16 of the large Sikorsky helicopters could fly all the segments into position in 3 months at a cost of $200 million. Fuller believed the dome would eventually happen once he decided on materials. But there are issues like completely changing the layout of Manhattan to fit within a dome. Social hierarchy also plays a part. Who would decide who's in the dome and who's out? And just think of the construction complications. It would have to be taller than skyscrapers. We've built small-scale domes, but a city-covering dome? Imagine closing parts of the major city down while you build over top it. Of course, you'd also need tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds. While creative, the Manhattan Dome just wasn't practical. Yet designs of domed cities are still being drawn up today, so perhaps it isn't a complete pipe dream. Exceed 4,000. Modern architecture is very familiar with the skyscraper, but what about the sky penetrator? A tower so tall, it doesn't just scrape the sky, it's part of the sky. Exceed 4,000 is exactly that. Designed by Taisei Construction Corporation, it remains the tallest building ever envisioned. Thought up in the mid-1990s for downtown Tokyo, the Seed is what some would call a hyperbuilding. It's 800 stories and would house up to 1.6 million people. In total, it would stand 13,123 feet or 2.5 miles tall. That's about 735 feet taller than Mount Fuji, and it would dwarf the current world record holder, the Burj Khalifa, which stands at a measly 2,717 feet. The Seed was designed to feature open space and greenery at its base, a penthouse at its very top, shops, offices, solar power, and wind turbines. It would have been a mega vertical city. So why didn't it get built? The obvious answer is that it's difficult to stabilize such a tall building. Plus, it would eat up blocks and blocks of space. And could the X-Speed hold up under a magnitude 8 earthquake? Then there's the issue of how its residents would get around. They would need a light rail or super high-speed elevator. While impressive, Tokyo wasn't the biggest fan of the idea because they didn't want their city dwarfed underneath it, or to have it blocking their view. In fact, the designers say they never really meant for it to be built at all. They were just showing off their skills. However, if we ever need to design epic vertical cities to preserve the Earth around us, then the concept might actually go somewhere. Shimizu Megacity Pyramid. Tokyo was also the proposed site for this next megaproject, the Shimizu Megacity Pyramid, an over 6,500-foot-tall structure with accommodation for 750,000 people. The concept was announced in 2004 by the Shimizu Corporation, the company behind the Aqua Line tunnel bridge. And they actually plan to build the pyramid one day. It'll be about 14 times larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It'll also be the largest man-made structure in the world, if something else doesn't beat it to the punch, because it's only due for completion around the year 2110. Why so long? Let's find out. To complete the project, an entire micro-society would need to be built. There would be about 240,000 housing units, offices, and commercial facilities. The proposed idea is to have the whole city built by automated robots. It would be composed of tubular beams and trusses made out of a carbon nanotube material. This material is the only one that could support the building's weight. The megacity would also be able to withstand earthquakes and tsunamis. It would be powered by solar energy, wind power, and even algae. How would you get around in a city hovering over the ocean with hanging skyscrapers? The idea is to have accelerated walkways, elevators at inclines, and a rapid transit system via automated pods. The company set its completion date 100 years in the future in the hopes that the nanotube and transport technology will be perfected by then, allowing this megacity to become a reality. Depth Scraper Tokyo. Towering skyscrapers are plenty impressive, but what about a super long tower that descends under the ground? That was the idea brought up by Japanese engineers after the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923 destroyed parts of Tokyo and Yokohama. The futuristic depth scraper was first revealed in the November 1931 issue of Popular Mechanics. The inverted skyscraper design is composed of 35 stories and looks like a 75-foot wide giant tunnel deep in the earth, with windows all around it. The cylindrical anti-tower is made from armored concrete with a steel frame. A single story sits on top, where residents can board an elevator that takes them into the depths of the tower. Once inside, they won't be stuck in stuffy darkness. Fresh air is pumped into the apartments from the surface, while sunlight is reflected into the units thanks to prismatic glass in all the windows. So why is a tower buried in the earth such a good idea? Subterranean structures suffer less seismic tremors. The engineers theorized that the structure's components would vibrate together during an earthquake, resisting the crushing strain that could cause destruction. They also theorized that the depth scraper could avoid damage from heavy storms by employing a shutter that closes over the opening in the ground. Of course, there are issues with this idea, and that's why it was never actually made. For one, it would cost billions. Plus, implementing the plans for generating sufficient energy, reflecting sunlight, and pumping in air are much easier said than done. The idea prevents urban sprawl and might protect from earthquakes, but what about heavy flooding? What about if a fire breaks out? So yeah, we won't see one built anytime soon. But with architects all over the world inspired by the idea of an inverted skyscraper, like this 900-foot design in Arizona, it's not entirely out of the question. Which of these futuristic megaprojects do you hope to see built in your lifetime? Which ones do you think have no chance of happening? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing architecture and inspiring innovations.